Albert in Florida. You're on the air with Jamie and Matt Dillahunty.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
All right. Hi, Matt. My guest is Jamie.
Yep.
I just had some questions about, I guess this is the first time I call, so excuse me if I'm a little nervous. I just wanted to ask some questions about atheism and the atheist lifestyle.
Okay. Yeah, there's more than one way to live your life when you don't have a God, so there's not one atheist lifestyle, but if you want to ask about my lifestyle or Matt's lifestyle, I'm not sure how much Matt wants to share or whatever, but I'm willing to.
My life's pretty much an open book.
Yeah, I just want to know kind of like, what do you guys believe in? I mean, like, what's the goal of your show? What's the gospel, the message that you guys are preaching or trying to spread? I mean, how is this show going to help humanity? How is atheism going to help humanity?
Well, the thing that's going to help humanity in it. Hello, Anthony. Well, the thing that would, I'm sorry, Albert. My apologies. The thing that would help humanity about having fewer people that believe in a God or that subscribe to religions would be that it would undo the kinds of harm that religion can cause, which, to be clear, is all that the word atheism means.
As an atheist, we just don't believe there's a God. That doesn't tell us anything about how to live. How to live and what things that are going to benefit humanity are skepticism and humanism.
Yeah.
Skepticism being about how you go about figuring out what is believable and what you should believe, and humanism being a moral, ethical view of the world that basically, as far as we can tell, we are stuck here. There's nobody supernatural to intervene on our behalf, and we've got to figure out how best to solve our problems. So while, this show is going to be different from the atheist experience in some senses, but the purpose of it, we don't have something to preach. There's no gospel. We don't believe there's a God, and we find it curious that we live in a world where so many people do, and whenever we ask them to give a justification for it, they fail miserably, which puts us in an even stranger position of being surrounded by people who believe something when they can't give any good reason for believing it. And the beliefs that they have are, in many cases, incredibly detrimental to humanity. They impede progress. They set up divisive positions where it's us versus them. So for me, I've been doing this for almost 14 years, and the purpose is to have the conversations, to get information out to people so that they can see, hey, has anybody in the history of humanity provided a good reason to believe the things that so many people believe? And if the answer is no, then shouldn't we stop believing those things and start working to make the world better without, hitting our knees and folding our hands in prayer? Because when has that ever done anything?
Besides affect the way that people feel, but in serious situations, I'd rather that people feel that those situations were serious and that something needed to be done, rather than just wishing away problems, because, as you just highlighted, that doesn't solve them, right? So the idea that when you have these conversations, we should promote a skeptical viewpoint as far as an approach to forming beliefs, because we'd like people to care whether or not what they believe is true. And when you do that and you examine the way in which you come to conclusions, one of the things that we've found is that scientific skepticism is the most reliable method for doing that. If you have another method that's more reliable, we'd love to hear about it. Does that pretty much answer your initial questions, Albert? Or
yeah, that does. How does this? Well, I have more. How does this show, for instance, differ from the other one, the Atheist Experience?
So the format is effectively the same, but we have an emphasis on having conversations with some of the same callers from week to week. So instead of a one-off conversation, which, because the Atheist Experience has so many callers and because people call in half an hour before, and call, get a busy signal, hang up and call again and get a busy signal. It's more difficult for the series of rotating hosts and co-hosts to have okay, well, I talked to you last week and I can talk to you this week again, and I'll talk to you the next week, as far as, oh, I explained something last week, but you've called in this week and I don't think you understood what I was saying. Call in again and let me help you with it again, sort of helping people get on their feet, which also makes it a better show for recent deconverts and other recent non-believers that need someone to reach out to for I'm a heathen now, how do I do that?
I think there's another aspect to this too, is that, so I've been hosting the Atheist Experience for almost 14 years, and there's now 3 regular hosts, although I'm on less than anybody now, myself, Russell, and Tracy. And then there's 5 co-hosts, and there is a whole bunch of people who would love to be involved in that sort of thing. If you watch the Atheist Experience, there are different styles and different approaches. Don's going to give a presentation on the failings of Christianity.
They just don't stop.
They never stop. But Tracy has a different style from John, and John has a different style from Jen, and Jen has a different style from me. So it's an opportunity to get some voices that people haven't heard, people who have been involved in this community with a different perspective. And, the things that Jamie was pointing out about going for more conversational, supportive, maybe, I don't know, you could view it as lighter or whatever else, but basically we have more people and more different perspectives than we could possibly ever fit into one show. So it made sense to start another one, and I'm glad they did. And I'm thrilled to actually be here to see how this goes.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Matt, I've heard you before. What I like about you is I like the way you explain things. You're very commonsensical. I don't know if that's even a word, but I like how you explain things in a way that people can understand them.
Thank you.
And I like your common sense. It's almost like, maybe I need to give you guys a little bit of background. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Seventh-day Adventists. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Or are you an ex-Seventh-day or an Seventh-day Adventist?
I'm not sure if I'm willing to give up my God safety net just yet. However, my father is a pastor, a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. I learned how to read from the Bible. By the time I was in 6th grade, I had read the entire Bible, and I'm talking the 1611 King James Version of the Bible that includes all 80 books, including the 14 books of the Apocrypha. I had read that entire book in English and Spanish by the time I was in 6th grade. My father is a pastor. We traveled building churches, building wells, and, helping the poor.
Traveled in the United States or abroad?
Abroad.
Oh, okay.
Abroad, mainly in the Caribbean and in South America, and we even went to Africa. But we've done a lot of traveling. I went to school. I have a degree in theology. I have another degree in religions of the world. I then went ahead and got a degree in computer science, to my father's dismay, because he wanted me to become a civil engineer and a pastor like him. And then I went on and got a graduate degree in occupational therapy and rehabilitative sciences. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 masters in science, and I've read the Bible, and I had, ever since I was a little kid, I had a lot of trouble with the Bible, especially.
That's a good sign.
I remember we don't go to church on Sundays. We go to church on Saturdays because of the Sabbath. Yep. Mm-hmm. So we don't have Sunday school. We have Saturday school. But I remember as a small child, my first bad experience with religion was I was in Saturday school, and they gave us these big poster boards, and they gave us these Crayola markers, and you had to draw, a picture of the story that they told you for the day. Well, they told us the story about Noah's Ark. And I drew this ark, and underneath the ark, I drew a bunch of dead puppies, dead kittens,
and an accurate picture.
Other dead animals. Yeah, and my dad, I don't want to talk bad about my dad or anything, but
you
Proverbs 23:13. Yeah, Proverbs 23:13 tells you, I don't know, Matt, you're familiar. Jamie, I'm not so sure if you're familiar with it. Are you
By
guys
the
familiar?
citation, no, but
Proverbs 23:13, well, it says, do not withhold correction from a child. So basically, if you read the whole verse, basically it says,
yeah,
do not withhold correction for a child, for if I beat him with a rod, he will not die. So he would always tell us that when we misbehaved, and he would take out his belt, and he would say, withhold not correction from a child, for if I beat him with a rod, he will not die. So I got a really serious ass whooping for drawing that. But my question to him was, if only these survived, how many died? How many babies died? How many women, infant, and children? How many babies in the womb died? How many other animals died?
Yeah, how does it count as correction if what you drew was accurate?
yeah. Also,
but
we know that that's not a good way that children learn, and there's the expression misery loves company. I don't think that misery loves anything, but if it helps at all, there are people that have gone through the same thing that you went through then and are going through now, as best I can tell. So if you're looking, I want you to finish the story you were telling, but if you're looking to find other people and common ground and support as far as a community and a possible landing ground, if you do, as you say, give up your belief net, they're out there. They're young and they're not as big or ubiquitous as Baptist churches of whatever first, second, third number. But, we're here for you. We're here if you need to talk.
But what I have found, like, for instance, is, like I said, I study theology. I study religions of the words. So, I can agree when I say that, yes, I do believe, like most biblical scholars, that the Bible is a collection of myths and stories sprinkled with some Roman propaganda and whatever propaganda of the time was. All you have to do is read the King James Version of the Bible from 1611 to the current one that you can purchase today, and you can see all the changes. Hell, they took away 14 books. Why? I have no clue. There's different theories of why.
Well, the 14 books that were taken away, so the AV 1611 included them, but listed them as non-canonical. The Apocrypha and stuff, by definition, Apocrypha is not part of the canon. So it's
according to who? Did God say that?
Well, God hasn't said anything so far as I'm aware.
Exactly.
But the list of canonized books, which predates even the AV 1611, doesn't include the Apocrypha, which is why it's called the Apocrypha, in part.
Right, but I'm saying all those books were supposedly, inspired by God, and who picked them? I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to, I'm just saying that I understand the history of the Bible. I understand that there is no original text. I understand all that.
Yeah, if you talk to the modern Protestants who are the AV 1611 only, that's the only Bible, even they aren't including the Apocrypha. What they're complaining about is, here's the way the verse reads in the King James in the 1611. Here's the way it reads in the NIV. The NIV is a poisonous, abomination from what the text says. The modern, especially Baptists who are keen on the 1611, aren't that concerned about the fact that the Apocrypha is gone, because most of them consider that to be Catholic, heathen, or I forget, apostolic, or no, that's not right either. I'm not going to get the word right, but it's Catholic doctrine that doesn't fit in with the Protestant view.
Yeah.
That's stuff you already know.
The Catholic Church has continued revelation, which just sort of means we can keep improving it with church announcements.
Which means Catholics should all become Mormons.
Really, though, yeah.
Yeah, that's the newest version. Anyway, I went off on a tangent, Albert. Yeah. Please continue.
Although, Albert.
Right. Well, anyhow, what I was saying about the Bible, I'm not here to, I know the history of the Bible. I know that there was no original text. I know that whole thing. But my thing is, for instance, if I find comfort in being able to pray, for instance, and because I talk with a lot of atheists, because I've had a lot of questions, and they basically, I ask them, what do you guys believe in? And they tell me, well, we believe in math, and science and critical thinking and evidence-based research.
Yeah.
I mean, would you agree? Is that kind of like what you guys believe in? I mean,
I have always had a problem with that phrasing when people say I believe in science.
Yeah.
Because it's just a parallel stating, a borrowing from the way that religions and religious believers have always stated what they believe to be true and all these things. And so in the same way that, as a result of the influence of religion in American society, we say like, oh, I believe in this cause. It's like, well, what you're really saying is you support this cause and want it to succeed, but so much of our language is influenced by that, right? Like there was at one point a competition to try and find the secular equivalent of the phrase preaching to the choir. And I'm not aware that any satisfactory version of that has been found. But no, so when I'm asked, particularly by a believer, oh, what do you believe in? I understand, or at least assume, that what they're asking me is, oh, I have this feeling and set of statements of what I believe about...
No, I'm not talking... Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not talking about feeling. I'm talking about how do you come to your beliefs? I mean, based on what? I mean, Matt uses the word evidence a lot. I've
That's a
listened
good
to a
place
lot.
to start.
Yeah, so
You have to have a way of evaluating it. Scientific skepticism is the two-word answer.
the thing that Jamie's quibbling over, which I completely agree, is there's a difference between believe in and believe that. And so it's probably better just to dump those, because by and large, I would imagine that we believe or accept as true most of the same things you do, and most of the same things most believers do. We just don't go that step further to accept the supernatural claims. So what seems to be what you're trying to get at is, how do I live my life? How do I go about deciding what's believable? What is guiding the decisions that I'm going to make about what actions I can take and what actions I should take? One of the biggest issues is, what is the foundation of your moral thinking? And, as I pointed out, everything is rooted in reason and evidence. Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore emotion at all, because that is a fact about reality, that you care for someone, that you love for someone, that you have empathy with someone. Those are valuable things, and they go into the decision-making process about moral decisions. And so I have kind of a set of statements or heuristics that are constantly present in my mind, which is that the think globally, act locally applies everywhere.
Yeah.
I think about, if everyone on the earth took the same action that I'm going to take, would we be better off or worse off, or is there any way to tell? And if we would be better off, then I evaluate that as a morally good action. If we would be worse off, it's a morally bad action. And if there's no way to tell, then we're in neutral category. We don't make a decision. In addition to, if everybody did this, what would it be like? I try to think about the consequences of my actions, not just for myself and not just in the immediate future, but look more long-term and more broadly in, how much of an impact it's going to have on people, which is why we talk about something like marriage equality, which many evangelicals for years and still are opposed to. I look at it and I'm like, first of all, we have this foundation of individual freedom and autonomy. And how can we allow some people to marry who they want and others not to? We don't get to point to a book and pretend that this book, is now the source of this. We have to actually use reason and evidence. And what damage or harm does it do to allow me to marry a woman or me to marry a man? Is there any functional difference there? And if you can't come up with a compelling reason to impede an action, then it should be permissible. We should have freedom, we should have maximal freedom, and then begin to limit it based only on good, real demonstrations of harm, not, oh, it offends my God, or, oh, that is icky to me. It has to be something about, here's how this actually affects the world. And if homosexuals want to be miserable and hate each other, they should be allowed to be married too. That is an obvious joke, mostly from my wife. We don't hate each other and aren't miserable.
Yeah. One of the things that you said in that I want to touch on is that, yeah, there's an immense value to the emotions and the feelings, and part of that comes down to the values that we use to evaluate morality and moral systems, right? At least in part, right? Like it's the sort of, oh, I have empathy, therefore I don't want to own another human as a slave or beat them, even if they don't die for a couple of days. And that starts from caring about other humans, which, despite what many Christians will tell you, isn't an objective fact, although it's a widespread tendency amongst humans. And one of the things that's, sorry, I noticed that in the notes it said you wanted to talk about where morality came from, even though you hadn't brought it up explicitly. One of the things that is interesting is when you follow the line down to, okay, well, Christians get the basis of their morality from commandments from God, and this is the correct thing. It reflects in the same way that the evangelical movement in the United States has pushed for, and now arguably had 2 presidents in the White House, which is that, well, this is the correct moral way, this is icky to me, and I will make it the law because I can win, right? Which is effectively might is right, just in the form of an election.
The single most important concept that I think we can teach people about moral decisions, and it goes beyond moral decisions. I mean, yes, skepticism is important, critical thinking, the evaluation of evidence, but the single most important thing that people can understand to guide their life is called the veil of ignorance. Design the society that you are willing to live in, not knowing who you will be. Should we allow slavery? Design a system if where you don't know if you're going to be the slave master or the slave. Design a system where you don't know if you're going to be gay or straight. Or anywhere on the spectrum. I don't want to make everything binary. Design a system where you're either going to come in as the child of incredibly wealthy parents, or you're going to be born into poverty and starvation. And if you put up this veil of ignorance, not knowing who you're going to be in the system, that removes as much bias as we are capable of removing and allows you to make decisions that are based impartially about the actual benefits and costs and how things really affect society. The primary example that John Rawls is the originator of this more robust veil of ignorance is you place a cake and you've got X number of people to divide it between. What's the fair way to do that? Well, you let one person cut the cake and they get to pick last. And that encourages them to make the pieces as fair as possible so that they're not left with crumbs. And we can expand on that with some cool math stuff. If you Google around on YouTube, there's ways to divide a cake.
I like that. That's actually what my parents used to do. If we ever had anything, if we had to divide something between the two, my mom would say, you cut it and you pick first.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that.
It's that way with everything. It should be that way with how we spend our money. It should be that way with how we go about making decisions about
But the thing is that even when I got what you said. You said, reasons and evidence, thinking globally and acting locally. If everybody did this, what would happen? Demonstrations of harm, the veil of ignorance. And you talk about emotions or feelings, but are you guys familiar with cognitive dissonance?
Yes, where you're able to simultaneously hold 2 mutually contradictory positions in your head.
They say simultaneously. I've always felt like it's switch back and forth depending on exactly. In the same way that computers don't really process 2 things simultaneously, they just switch back and forth. So
right,
quickly.
exactly.
But go ahead.
I can give you an example right now where I could have you guys experience cognitive dissonance, where you guys would both right now, and please don't take this the wrong way. I've done my research. I know that the countries that have the largest atheist populations have the lowest rates of crime, rape, murder, and so on. I know that the countries that have the highest rates of religious people, theists, have the highest rates of crime, rape,
Right.
And on and on and on. I know, that our prison population is 99% theist, 80% of which are Christians, and only less than 1% are atheists. So I know that. I mean, if you were to do the math right now, the atheists are definitely beating the theists when it comes to, not harming each other.
While I'd love to take all of that and just say, yay, us, there's a problem with a number of the statistics, and correlation isn't causation, so you couldn't make the case that atheism necessarily results in a better society. Certainly not atheism on its own.
Yeah, science.
I think you could do it for humanism.
If you look at but if you look at, like, for instance, the Abrahamic religions, which I was brought up in an Abrahamic religion, if we were to follow the laws of Leviticus, I don't know if you're familiar with the laws of Leviticus, right now, to a T, we would either wind up being killed or incarcerated.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we would.
Yeah.
I mean,
And if we
just the
followed
way
it as
is.
a nation, Maine would go through an economic crisis because no one would buy lobster or crab.
Right. But I mean, I can give you an example. Like right now, like I feel comfort when I pray. I feel comfort, starting off every day, praying, and I feel comfort ending each day praying for what I'm thankful for. Before I started talking to you guys, I prayed that I would be able to communicate my thoughts clearly in a way that you guys would be willing to understand. You see what I'm saying? Now,
So one quick question, Albert. Do you think that if instead of praying, you had sat there calmly, focused on your thoughts, prepared yourself, that you would have had pretty much the same result?
well, I mean, you're familiar with scientific studies. There's usually 3 control groups. What are the 3 control groups in a scientific study?
Well, the 3 groups, yeah. So there's the experimental group, the control group, and then the control
Placebo.
group that's, the placebo.
The placebo. So it would be like a placebo. I mean, studies show, and that's why they have that group with a placebo.
Yeah,
So,
studies on intercessory prayer show
Yeah.
that it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing that you're talking about here is that you pray because you feel better when you pray. And the question is, why do you feel better when you pray? Is it because you've been conditioned and trained yourself and been trained by others to feel better when you pray? Or is it because there's some supernatural being that is comforting you when you do it? And I think given what we know about meditation and relaxation and stuff like that, I've said before, prayer works. Because if you're in a cave-in and you panic, you use up oxygen faster. If you pray, you will use oxygen less quickly and extend the amount of time you have to be rescued. Therefore, if you're in a cave-in and you pray, your chances of being rescued go up. But they don't go up because there's a God listening to your prayer. They go up because prayer can be calming as long as you're convinced that it's calming. Prayer probably wouldn't do crap for me because I'm not convinced it's calming. Maybe I would need a meditation technique, or maybe I would be able to say, hey, I better not use up too much oxygen if I want to be rescued. And maybe that cognitive process would get me calm enough. Not saying it would necessarily work for everybody, but the fact that you feel comforted and calmed by praying, isn't it? I have no objection or disagreement with that. And I know people who don't believe in a God who do the rough equivalent of praying. Let me throw my thoughts out in the universe. This voluntary action of taking the stress and anxiety that you feel and placing it somewhere else, even if it's fictional. If you can convince yourself momentarily that this is not going to hinder your abilities, that you are going to set aside your anxiety. Prayer isn't the only way to do that. It's one way, but it doesn't tell me anything about whether there's a God.
Yeah, and I would add to that what you're getting as a value from that prayer is not, I would say there isn't a good reason to believe that a supernatural being is comforting you. What you're getting is mastery over yourself. Like you are able to lessen anxiety and convince yourself that you should be confident in the way that you communicate. And I feel like there's a lot of therapeutic things that you can do, right? You're using a very, very small element, although Christians would say it's the most important element or whatever.
Well, you get 5 people to pray to different gods.
Yeah.
If they're all comforted.
I'm saying it's kind of like, you can say that, okay, I mean, like I've had this explained to me kind of like this, well, you're just, in order for you to believe, you have to almost like turn off rational thought. In order for you to believe in a God, you have to turn off rational thought, and you're turning off rational thought in order to feel comfort in something that you're doing. But I mean, you guys do the same thing. I mean, I could give you guys examples right now where you guys in your own lifestyles turn off critical thinking.
Okay, give me an example.
Feel better.
Give me an example because
feel better about your actions.
Give me an example because what I can say is that anytime it's been exposed to me that I'm engaged in magical thinking, that I'm suspending reason, I stop doing it. So give me the example.
Okay, I'm going to show you an example where you're going to turn off rational thought, critical thinking, and you're going to go for like faith or social norms or social behavior.
Well, here's the thing. Social norms and empathy aren't necessarily irrational, but go ahead and give me your example.
Okay. You stated in the beginning of the show that you have cats, right?
I have 4 cats, yes.
I have 2.
4 cats. And you have 2, Jamie? Is that what you said? Yep. Have you guys ever come home really, really angry at your cat and saw that it pooped outside the litter box and you decided to put them into a crate and leave them outside for 6 months, still fed them and watered them, but just left them outside because they pooped outside their litter box?
No.
No.
No. Why not?
What would be the purpose in doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, why not? I mean, don't you think that would teach them not to poop in the litter box?
No, I have no good reason to think that would teach them to poop in a litter box. First of all, cats poop in a litter box almost automatically. You don't even have to show them where it is. They'll go find it. But what we know about cats and how they learn, you can toilet train a cat by putting a litter box over the toilet seat, and then over a period of time, you remove the litter box, and the cat will still go to the toilet seat and do it. I've seen plenty of cats that do it. I have no reason to think that putting a cat outside is going to teach it that, any more than I think smacking a dog with a newspaper is going to teach them not to poop inside. Just in the same way that I don't think beating a child is going to teach them anything other than, hey, it's okay to resort to violence when you can't reason. So no, I would never do that. I would never do that, and my reasons for not doing that are reasonable.
Well, what are your reasons for not doing that?
I just explained.
Yeah, you just stated them.
You don't take an action. There's no reason for me to do this because it has no evidence that it would achieve the goal that I want, which is for the cat to poop in the litter box.
Yeah, so what just happened is you suggested a course of action. Matt evaluated it using what he knows, and he determined that that action would cause harm and that there are alternative courses of action to achieve the same ends that are effective.
But would it really cause harm? I mean, if you beat a child, you know what I mean, you don't die from being beaten.
Beating a child causes harm.
Yes, it causes harm.
Psychological and physical.
Putting a cat in a crate for a few months, is that going to cause harm?
Yes. You don't get to write off psychological harm and as if it's not reasonable to consider.
Yeah.
Right.
You do realize that. So I have a friend
I'm getting to my point, Matt. Please,
okay, good.
I'm getting to my point. I told you that I was going to give you an example where you were going to turn off critical thinking and you were going to grasp for.
I got you. I know what you said. I'm waiting for you to do that.
Bring the checkmate.
Right. Okay. I'm going to do that. Do you eat bacon?
Yes.
Yes.
How about you, Jamie? Do you eat bacon?
I also.
Okay. Do you realize what those animals go through?
Yes.
Do you realize that you're taking a pig that's smarter? Studies show that they're smarter than cats and dogs. Actually, they're as smart as a 3-year-old child.
I don't know how is smart relevant?
You also didn't ask whether I would eat a cat or eat cat meat.
Yeah, but would you eat a cat?
Yes.
If it was, yeah.
You know, would you eat a dog?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you know, you're mistreating that animal. That animal is being put.
If the meat of an animal can't.
You are conflating. You are conflating the eating of meat with how the meat is acquired. Those are two separate things. If there's a cat killed on the side of the road, I did nothing to it. It's not immoral in the slightest for me to eat that cat.
Okay, so what if you pay somebody to kill the cat for you? Is that immoral?
Well, it depends. Is a cat a domesticated animal that has an owner, or is it a farm animal? Because there's a distinction.
Well, I mean, I don't understand what distinction there is. For instance, if you put a cat in a crate, you just explained to me that would be causing harm.
Yeah.
and you left it in a crate for 6 months, it
Yeah.
would be causing harm to that cat.
You haven't asked me. You haven't
asked.
asked me the obvious question, Albert. This is the thing that's your thinking is very confused. If you asked me, is putting a pig in a small container for months harmful to the pig? My answer would be yes. My view is consistent. You are not thinking about these things. You think you have a gotcha, but you're not asking equivalent questions.
No.
You asked.
I'm asking a question.
You asked if putting a cat in a box for months in order to teach it something was something I would do, and I would say no. You would ask if it harmed the cat. If you asked,
no,
Albert, let me finish.
Yeah,
Albert,
let him finish.
you asked me if it would harm the cat. I said yes. And then you asked me, do you eat bacon? Which is not remotely the same as, would it harm a pig to lock a pig in a tiny container for months? And my answer is yes. My answers are consistent. It is your confused questioning that is inconsistent.
Also, I'm just sort of wondering why you didn't go to, would you sentence someone to go to jail? Because that's locking a human in a crate. Locking a human in a crate, and if it's a federal facility, then oftentimes locking a human in a large, complicated series of crates where they're going to encounter people.
That's directly analogous.
Yeah.
Jamie's question there is directly analogous to that.
Right, no, if the person did something wrong, I don't think a pig can do something wrong, just like I don't think pooping outside the litter box warrants putting a cat outside.
But now you're talking.
To be clear, what you've acknowledged is that there are circumstances under which causing harm, as an isolated idea, you wouldn't want. All other things being equal, you wouldn't want to cause harm. However, if we live in a society and we have prisons, and we support this idea, then clearly there are circumstances under which causing the harm of locking a human being in a box with bars is permitted.
So, for example, you could view cats and dogs as roughly equivalent for this example. And if the dog pooped inside, would you lock him up in a crate for months? No. But if the dog was rabid and demonstrated a danger to people, I would definitely lock him in a crate until such time as we could actually put the dog down. So you have to you're talking about, is there harm by locking something in a cage? Yes, and that's true for pigs, cats, dogs, and human beings. The separate question is there sufficient justification to lock something in a cage? If the cat is violent and vicious, and or the dog is violent and vicious, then maybe you have sufficient justification to put that cat or dog in a cage, the same as you would the human. This is the problem when you start making these moral quandaries and dilemmas. They have to be directly analogous, otherwise you are committing the fallacy by analogy, that you have two things that are not equivalent, and it's equivocation fallacy that you're trying to make equivalent. So lock a cat in a box, is it harmful? Yes. But that doesn't mean that there's not a good reason for it. It just means that not pooping in the litter box isn't sufficient justification for putting it in a box. Does that make sense?
Right, but see,
Where's my cognitive dissonance? Where's my failure to reason?
Right.
Checkmate averted.
This is where we got off. You were trying to justify your action of eating bacon.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I know. At no point did I try to justify why I eat bacon. We haven't even had a conversation about whether or not it's moral to eat bacon.
I asked you
because eating bacon isn't equivalent to murdering an animal or killing an animal, whichever.
This is the thing. You think you've caught me in cognitive dissonance, and at every point I've shown you that that is not the case, that it is your sloppy thinking about asking these questions that makes it appear that.
Let me ask you.
Albert, there's a fundamental problem in this series of questions, which is cognitive dissonance is about coming to two. Albert, let me finish this because we're on floor 13 of a building with a bad foundation, and we need to go back down for a second. The fundamental problem with this series of questions about trying to get to cognitive dissonance is that cognitive dissonance is about holding two contradictory beliefs about a fact claim that are in contradiction. If you're trying to expose a weakness or a poorly thought out moral decision, or something that appears incongruous with a series of values and a method of moral evaluation, you can do that. But that is very different than believing that there is a human-sized bunny rabbit that is invisible and intangible that follows me around and talks to me.
Cognitive dissonance would be simultaneously or switching back and forth between saying, no, locking the cat up doesn't harm it, and yes, locking the cat up doesn't harm it. That's cognitive dissonance. As soon as you change the subject, the conditions, the surrounding thing, that's no longer cognitive dissonance. Just like I would argue that there's a benefit to trying to reason with an adult and not particularly a benefit with trying to reason with an infant who can't understand what you're saying, yet they're both people. I could, is there any benefit to arguing with people? Yes. Well, what if that person is 6 months old? Well, clearly no. So that's not cognitive dissonance. That's a recognition of a distinction between them, just like I recognize the distinction between the reasons why we would put a cat in a box and the reasons why we would eat bacon. You don't seem to know what cognitive dissonance is if this is your trap to show that we're in it.
I would also like to state for the record that there's not really that much benefit trying to reason with a cat. But there's a reason that we call believing that there is a door and that there isn't a door simultaneously, or believing that this is wrong and that it's not wrong at the same time as cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And, oh, I would never hurt my child, and then that person goes home and beats their child. There's a reason that we call that hypocrisy and not cognitive dissonance, and that is because those two things are not the same.
Okay, the point that I was trying to make is that sometimes I think we turn off our brain in order to feel comfortable with our actions.
I agree.
And
if you've ever seen someone mourn the death of a loved one, denial is one of the first things that happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I was trying. I think I would never put a cat into a crate. I don't think that you can argue with a cat either. I don't think that putting a cat in a crate is a good thing. I don't think it would help. I think it would. I agree with both of you that it would cause harm. I think the same thing about a pig. I think that putting a pig into a crate would definitely cause harm.
Me too.
I don't think that we need to eat meat. I don't think we need to be killing innocent animals. You know what I mean? That's why I don't eat meat.
Okay.
I'm sorry with my sloppy thinking. I was just trying to find an example which showed.
This could have been really easy, Albert. This could have been really easy, Albert, because we both agree that occasionally all human beings stop thinking rationally and engage in something irrationally for emotional reasons. That the fact that we all do it is separate from should we do it, and whether or not we should do it is dependent upon the situation. If my grandmother is on her deathbed and asks me, do I think she's going to heaven? I'm going to say no, because she already knows that's what I think. It's an honest answer. It's not particularly comforting. If she is in doubt about whether or not there's an afterlife, is it a bad thing for her to, on her deathbed, rationalize and say, oh, I'm going home to Jesus, I'm going home to... It's doing no real harm at that point. It may be doing harm if you're 12, and this is going to determine how you live the rest of your life. Believing that you're going home to be with Jesus at some point in the future will control the next 70 years of your life or so. Whereas somebody on their deathbed, there's nothing left to do. So the fact that we can all engage in suspending reason for the sake of our own emotions doesn't mean we should, and whether or not we should is dependent on circumstances. If we'd have started there, which I think we agree on, then all that cats and dogs and pigs stuff would have been irrelevant. And none of this, by the way, is a demonstration of cognitive dissonance. It's a demonstration that we are human beings, and that we make mistakes, and that I will happily try to correct mistakes when they've been exposed. But if I find a flaw in, if you construct a syllogism of everything that we discussed, you'd be able to see the fallacies. You'd be able to see the equivocation. You can't always see that in a conversational type of dialogue, which is why shows like this are awesome, occasionally frustrating, but I'm enjoying this call and others.
Yeah, and I would like to say, Albert, the fact that really, I know that you know, it's, even when I watch old episodes, I try and respond to things that callers and that Matt say, but this doesn't demonstrate a level of cognitive dissonance, and it would be better if humans didn't rationalize and come to illogical beliefs. However, we didn't evolve, or whether you believe in creationism, we don't exist in such a way that we can turn off irrationality. And so we have to find some way, if we're going to live in a civil society, of managing that. And I'm happy to use whatever tools, cognitive, that I can on myself to limit and control the influence of irrational tendencies in my mind. Whether that means making myself, allowing myself to believe that something that's unlikely is more likely for a moment so that I feel better, is to me in many cases useful, because feeling negative or panicked or stressed about something doesn't facilitate my ability to evaluate it rationally. So if I take 5 minutes to myself and I think about ponies or rabbits, or I watch a cat video online and I think about how amazing it's going to be that my cat at home, I could definitely take the time and teach it to do a backflip with a bow or whatever it is I find online, that might make me happy, and then I would pet my cat and feel better, and then I would think about the thing that was causing the stress and the irrationality. So it's not about coming to a series of beliefs about what exists in reality and then living one's life by them. It's about managing the irrationality that we all have inside our own heads. And to what started this call, you said you're not sure you're ready to give up your belief net, I think is the phrase that you used. And I would say, those are things that you don't need those specific beliefs to do, and those are things that you can do without any specific belief. And so one of the things I want to get to, I mean, you are going to want to respond to this, but one of the things I want to get back to in this call is what started this questioning for you. But has what we've said so far about dealing with the rationality and coming to conclusions for seemingly irrational ideas addressed, I think, the core of what you were getting at? The core of the human behavior you were getting at?
Yeah, it's getting there. I'm still a little confused about and I'm just asking so I don't make this mistake again.
Sure.
What you said that's not cognitive dissonance. What? So if I'm eating bacon because it tastes good, but yet I know that I paid somebody to torture and kill this animal, what is that called? Just wondering.
I think Jamie referenced it as hypocrisy earlier.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance is basically, I believe this and I don't believe this. And the illusion is that we believe it simultaneously. Jamie and I are in agreement that we don't actually believe it simultaneously, that the process of rationalization allows us to switch back and forth. So, for example, I believe that stealing is wrong. But during hurricanes, you see looting. And I believe that in many cases, that is the single most moral action that somebody can take, to steal in that situation in order to save a life and preserve a life. Are those two things in conflict? No, because there's a situation surrounding this. The error is in me saying, I believe it is wrong to steal. And what I should say is that situationally, I am convinced that it is wrong to steal, that there are going to be exceptions. It is when we speak about things in absolutes that we make mistakes. We tend to overgeneralize. And this ties into kind of what Jamie was saying a minute ago, and that is, I care more about my wife than I do about you, Albert. I just do. There's nothing that I can do about that right now. Is that reasonable? Perhaps if I knew enough about the way the world works, I would care more about you than I do about my wife. Perhaps if I knew more about the way the world works, or if I knew more about the way that the world works, I would care more about people in a foreign country than I do in my own country. It may be the case that I'm wrong about this, and if there's a good demonstration that I should reprioritize things, I'm happy to do it. But until then, I care about me most. I care about the people around me most. I care about, my sphere of influence and concern expands. And it also, with not just respect to geography, but with respect to time. I care more about the people who are alive right now than I do about the people who are going to be alive in 10 years or 100 years. That may be the biggest mistake we as a species can make, to not think about the future enough to preserve. But it may also be that you have to focus on that. So there's this fallacy known as the fallacy of relative privation, which is that, you should only concern yourself with the biggest problem. And people will call and say, why are you spending all your time on religion instead of cancer? Or, why are we focused on legislation in this area instead of global warming, climate change being a much bigger issue? And in some cases, it is a legitimate mistake, and in some cases, it's not. But it may be that if everybody was focused on cancer, then people would be dying of diabetes and polio and smallpox and all these other things. So there's a balancing act, and it's a cost-benefit complex thing. It happens not only with where we put our money, but how we encourage our research, and in how I live my life. I'm going to take care of my mortgage and my car because taking care of those things, and I'm also going to play video games. People are like, why would you play video games? Why aren't you out? You know, we work with Thoughts and Atheists helping the homeless and humanists at work. My wife made 500 hats for the homeless over the last year. It's awesome stuff. I didn't do that. All I did was clap and applaud and drive her around to deliver them. I'll play video games. Why? Because that increases my happiness and makes it so that I can better focus my efforts when I come do the show. If I try to do this show 24 hours a day, or let's say 16 hours a day, the show would suck. Both shows would suck.
Yeah.
You have to take breaks. You have to consider the mental health of the individual, and that includes thinking about empathy and what you value and having fun, because all of that together goes into who we are as human beings.
Yeah, and I'd like to highlight again that at the foundation of this is what I think is kind of a failure to distinguish between claims of fact and value judgments, and these are the same, right? For example, the trolley problem. Oh, do you let the train continue down the track and hit the one person, or do you take the action of switching the track and go down the track and hit 5 people?
Yeah.
Or do you take the...
The other way's a little easier.
The other way's a little easier, yeah. Or do you take the action of switching the track and having hit 5 people? That's something that people can disagree about because it's not something that you can evaluate using scientific skepticism. It's something that you make moral judgments about and arguments about. That
I'm not sure I agree.
Well, at the basis of value judgments?
I'm not sure I agree. I think I'm convinced that the reason we think that is because we don't have a good enough understanding. We don't know enough about things, and that if we knew, we would be able to make a rational decision based on evidence.
So, I mean, yes and no, but if your system of evaluating moral questions is consequential or based in consequentialism, like, oh, you can evaluate objectively what the results of an action are.
Well, the factors are too broad.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the factors are too broad,
Okay.
but if you have
There's
like a
5 people.
virtue ethic, then you can
There's
disagree on
5
that.
people here. There's 1 person here. The train's headed for the 5. Do I flip the switch and take out the 1? Well, you can add things to that all day long that make it more complicated. Like this 1 person is going to cure cancer, and these 5 people are a gang of people who are going to run around slaughtering people. You can complicate this. I just don't think we can ever know enough to know that we've made the right decision in those. Anyway, Albert,
we've
welcome
run all
back.
over that.
Yeah.
from 4 rabbit holes.
No. Okay. No, I appreciate. I'm just like I'm just trying to figure. Like I said, I'm just trying to figure things out. The whole like God of Abraham thing. I've always had issues with that, but I believe that there's a God within us, within all of us, and I believe that we should respect all living beings, and that includes cats, dogs, pigs, infants, people of all races, all nationalities. So I like my morals come from like you said. I mean, I try to think globally and act locally. I do believe, and Matt, you are living proof that one person can make a huge difference. You know how they say, well, what difference could I make? You know what I mean? You've made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, and I'm glad for what you're doing. And Jamie, the same thing. I hope that you're able to touch the minds and hearts of millions of people. I think what you guys are doing is a great thing.
I greatly appreciate that, Albert. But I will say that nothing I've done, almost nothing I've done, have I done on my own. There's several people on the other side of that wall who make the show happen and just increase technical stuff. There's the people who are putting together the website. Hell, if it weren't for somebody putting together an internet, nobody would be able to hear. I did run across something interesting during my antique shopping. This is a sampler, a needlepoint sampler that's really, really old. There's no way we could actually get a good close-up on my phone. But it says, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad, and that's my religion. While it is a gross oversimplification, like anything that you're going to try to bumper sticker, I'm on board with that.
Also, I would say one of the things that's interesting as far as if you ever feel down about like, oh, what impact can I have? People now say like, oh, why should I vote? It won't change anything, which it will because your vote is counted. That's a different number. That's a change. Sorry, I'm going to knock it off on that right now.
Let me do one thing on the vote thing. Even if you vote for somebody who loses, the people who show up and vote help determine how money's going to be spent in future elections. That's how you know whether or not a particular region is trending red, trending blue, trending independent, whatever. Because if they say, oh, this thing's never, no Democrat's ever going to win in Alabama, why would we spend any money there? And that discourages people from voting, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If instead people go out and vote, then all of a sudden you realize, hey, maybe there's more here than we thought. You put money on it, then you get an absolute crap candidate like Roy Moore, and all of a sudden a Democrat wins in Alabama.
Yeah, that and a self-fulfilling prophecy, the only kind of prophecy that's ever been any kind of reliable. Yeah. But I would also say that
that's another problem that I have as a theist is I see people that believe, like people that believe in God. I mean, and it's kind of like you have all these people saying, oh, we should, feed the hungry and clothe the poor, but then, they're the same ones that are passing laws that are preventing others from helping, feed the hungry and clothe the poor. So I believe in global warming. I drive a car. I drive an electric car. I know that I would be putting a smaller footprint on the planet if I walked to work or rode a bike. But right now, I feel comfortable enough, driving an electric car. The same thing that I said about meat. You know what I mean? I don't eat any meat because I don't want to cause any harm. But I have I feel good when I pray. I feel good, like believing. It's almost like I've been doing a lot of research now. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ian Stevenson.
No.
He's from University of Virginia.
Nope.
He works with reincarnation. You guys can do work on that. The whole thing, I don't like the idea, and I know this is, we have nobody's ever come from heaven or hell. I don't believe there's a heaven or hell. But I mean, to me, it's scary to think that, I'm almost like stepping towards believing in reincarnation. I think there's a lot of studies on that. But it's kind of like when you say, I know you say atheism is just not believing in a God.
Yeah.
But when you jump from being, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Seventh-day Adventists, but any close-knit religious group, when you jump from there, it's almost like you're losing your safety net and all the things that you were taught that mattered.
And that's why
all of a sudden
that's why we have organizations like Recovering from Religion, so that people coming out of religious organizations have landing spaces of similarly minded people coming from similar backgrounds. Even if you remain religious in some aspect for the rest of your life, I would still look into organizations like Recovering from Religion, because you have stories to share with those people and they have stories to share with you, and you might find that the safety net you need is found in other human beings with similar thoughts than it is in appealing to supernatural deities or whatever.
And I would like to add to that's part of the reason that organizations like this exist, right? It's the Atheist Community of Austin, and most of our members are not recent deconverts, depending on how you define recent. But there are people that I know that come here to this frequently that also came out of tightly knit religious groups where that was the entirety of their life and they knew nothing else. And this isn't we've all been there, dude, take a jump. But that it's not the end of the world when you leave religion. It's just the end of a worldview. And having been on both sides of that fence, the grass is greener over here. And I'm here to help you climb over. Which is why, actually, if you're ready for it, can we at some point talk about? Actually, are you able to call back next week?
Yeah, I mean, I work on Sundays, but I mean, I clocked out today to come and listen and talk to you guys. I mean,
thanks for that.
I can call next. What time is it going to be next Sunday? Because I was looking and I saw 12 and then I saw 1, and then I'm on Eastern time. I don't.
On your time, it's 12. Or no, on your time, it's 2. It's 1 p.m. Central.
Yeah.
Is when they.
What time is it where you are now? Is what I always do.
Right now it's 3:00. Right, we're at 3
Okay.
or 4.
So we started the show.
2:00 is.
Yeah. 2:00 your time. We started the show 1 hour ago. So it will be, what is it, 167 hours from now.
Yes, that doesn't complicate
That doesn't
things at all.
complicate it at all. No, it will be 1 hour ago next week. But if you're having to clock out, there's, I don't know if you use the Facebook or the Tweetbook or Reddit, but you can reach out, you can email. Oh my God, we say that multiple times every show. Email this show at mail, like receiving mail, not like
MAIL.
AI, mail at talkheathen.com. And you can also email the Atheist Experience at TV at atheist-community.org. I think we can, let's do, are you willing to talk about how this sort of series of questioning, or how you found your way from not believing that a heaven or hell exists and seeing hypocrisy in religious legislatures and all this? Because the way it sounds, I mean, at this point I'm willing, do you go to church on Saturday?
My dad's a pastor, so it's kind of.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, yeah, and the
So you
thing
could
is
ask
that
whether to carpool.
Well, to be fair, since I accused Albert of being sloppy, I'll accuse you of being sloppy too,
Yeah.
because hell, I go to church sometimes. It doesn't.
Actually, I went to church recently, with my parents, but yeah.
And actually, there are plenty of preachers who go to church frequently who have no belief in a God, and they're members of the Clergy Project. Mm-hmm. Some of them.
There's good people in church. I don't want to say.
Oh yeah, there's good people everywhere.
You know, I mean,
Especially when I'm.
And there's people that there's a lot of people that go to church because that's what they are used to doing. You know.
Yeah.
Every Saturday or Sunday, that's just the norm.
It's a social thing for a lot of.
It's the difference between religion and
playing
faith.
the piano, playing instruments, and it's that they kind of look forward to dressing up or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like.
There's the dressing up, there's the social aspect, there's gossiping, there's the networking, but also I know atheists like Dr. Bob Price. He's as atheist as you're going to find, and a New Testament scholar, and he likes to go to church for the pageantry and the experience and the music and all this, even though he has no belief in anything supernatural. Although he did encourage people to vote for Trump, so maybe he's not the best example for that.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I don't like about churches. And Seventh-day Adventists aren't as bad as other churches, but here in Florida, during the election, we had Baptist churches here handing out Trump signs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could go to your local Baptist church and get Trump signs. To me, what the hell? And
It's like the
and I'll be
Johnson
honest with you,
Amendment
one of the
doesn't
things that really got me was during this election. There's no way in hell that anybody could say that Trump is a Christian. There's no way in hell. There's absolutely no way in hell.
Well, I don't know. His thinking sounds pretty muddled.
My thoughts on this are simple. I have an atheist kind of coworker who made the claim that Trump's an atheist and everybody knows it. And my response was, no, we don't know that. What I know is that he's not particularly knowledgeable about religion.
2 Corinthians.
That's actually.
Yeah,
he shouldn't have been criticized for that, because biblical scholars will sometimes refer to as 2 Corinthians, but he's not a biblical scholar. He's a doofus. But he doesn't know that much about religion.
They voted for him because of Pence. They voted for him because of Pence.
Yeah, Pence got the evangelical vote. But the thing is, if he says he's a believer, then I have to take him at his word, because despite pretending to do it on stage, I can't actually read minds. And also, if he was an atheist, I wouldn't be, touting it as a proud moment. But if he's not going to say he's an atheist, I'm definitely not going to claim him. What I can say is that as a former Southern Baptist, I'm confused, because I have family members who would look at Trump and everything he said and done and said, there is no way that this is a godly man. And yet they're happily voting for him. I know why. It's about abortion. That's pretty much It is about abortion. It is about end times prophecies for a lot of them. They're so eager for the apocalypse that they will elect the least qualified, least educated, or least knowledgeable, least presidential person, mainly because they think he's going to usher in the end times. And so when he made the pronouncement of Jerusalem,
well, he actually might. He might actually destroy the planet.
That's what I was going to say.
So he actually might. He might cause a nuclear war and actually cause,
Yeah. Anyway, we are way off track from.
Yeah. Also, Albert, we've been on the line with you for I think almost a whole hour. Yeah, it was a good call, but we want to get to some other callers. If you are willing to call back next week or a couple weeks from now, that would be fantastic. I can't say that Matt will be here. Eric will probably be back. But I do want to stay in touch with you in between shows. I don't know if you, have
email, Facebook.
Email, Facebook. I don't think I've ever actually said my Twitter handle on the air, but it's reason_evidence.
I want to, I appreciate being able to talk with atheists. I'll be honest with you because, when I was growing up, there was the worst thing that you could possibly be is an atheist. And it's almost like we were taught if somebody was a different religion, you need to kind of lift an eyebrow. But if they're an atheist, oh my God, they eat baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I eat baby pigs.
Yeah. But anyhow, that's what we were taught. So there's a lot. And then when I started going to school, like I said, I went to school, and I got when you start going to school, graduate school, especially in sciences, most of your professors are atheists.
Yeah.
And then when you start working at hospitals, most of the people you work with are also atheists. Your patients aren't, but most of the people you work with are. And I could go on forever on all the reasons.
Yeah. Well,
they've given me for.
Yeah. Albert, we want to hop to a different call, but I want to thank you for calling in today, and again, encourage you to call in on another week, okay?
All right, excellent. Thank you guys for taking my call, and I appreciate all, you answering my questions.
Thank you for your time.
And I'll be.
Thanks for calling in, Albert.
Day. All right, thank you. Bye.
Oh, dang it. I dropped him in the middle of him saying goodbye.
Bye-bye.
I knew what he was going to say.
See?
Yeah.
Context.
Yes. All right.